Hey everybody, welcome to the Herd Fit Podcast with Dr. Sam Rhee and myself, Coach David Syvertsen. This podcast is aimed at helping anyone and everyone looking to enhance their healthy lifestyle through fitness, nutrition, and most importantly, mindset.
Welcome back to the Herd Fit Podcast. I am Coach David Syvertsen here with my co-host, Dr. and Coach Sam Rhee. And we are now a few weeks removed from the CrossFit Open. And I promise this is the last time we'll talk about it for a while. But this is one of my favorite episodes to record all year. The CrossFit Open is done. Where do we go from here? And for most of you, it's nowhere. I'm just going to keep doing what I do, and I'll see you at the open party next year. Hope maybe we might have the same beer sponsor again, or maybe even Chipotle again. But last year, on March 28th, 2022, this is Season 2, Episode 44 on the Herd Fit Podcast. We did this episode. The 22 CF Open is done. Now what? And we did this the year prior on Sam's Botox and Burpees podcast. And I think it's a great time of year. I call this the New Year's of CrossFit, where your season's over, most of you, right? And it kind of gives you some objective measurement of where you stand with certain workouts, certain movements amongst a very big group of fit people. And if you are in this for improvement, trying to escalate where you're at, trying to constantly push the needle, push the threshold, or you have competitive goals, this is the time of year where you need to reflect the most. And I want to go into a few different, maybe outside the box ideas on how you can get more out of CrossFit or get better. I don't want to be too repetitive. I listened to the last 2 episodes that we did on this, and I really don't want to just say the same thing over and over again. But if you have not listened to those, if you just started to listen to us within the past year, I would go back and listen to those because there's a lot of information there that I was driving and I was like bobbing my head. Is that like really like kind of full of yourself? But it was just like things that you just always kind of to go back to the roots of what gets you better at CrossFit. Like how do you actually get better at CrossFit if that's something that you care about? The answers are in those episodes. But I'm going to go a little outside the box on this and just give you kind of 3 different mental approaches or things to think about throughout the year, including right now, that I think can push the needle for you a little bit. One thing that's challenging from my perspective is that we have a lot of CrossFitters in our gym now that have been doing this for years. Some people 10. I mean, the amount of people in our gym that have been doing this for over 5 years now, it's a lot.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's over half of our gym.
Yeah.
And when you try to make gains after doing CrossFit for that long, it's harder. It just is. Whether it's not just an age thing or your life has changed, it's just that's anything in life. The gains can still happen, but they are fewer and far between. Because if not, to quote James Fitzgerald, we'd all be squatting 1,000 pounds and running 3-minute miles if we just were constantly improving. It's just not going to happen. So, Sam, opening thoughts on where an athlete should go from here. And yes, this might be a little bit biased towards performance, but it doesn't need to be, and it won't be, because as you see what I'll talk about. Just what are your opening thoughts if someone came up to you and said, hey, how can I get better for next year?
Well, the first thing is that that presupposes that you want to get better at CrossFit. There are a lot of people that do this who don't necessarily think that CrossFit is the end-all or be-all or fitness. To me, it is. Like, if I got tested at something in the CrossFit Open and I fell short, I would realize there's a hole in my game.
Good.
There are others who might do that and be like, who cares about shuttle runs? That's not part of my fitness. Like, what does that have to do with lifting or this or gymnastics or whatever? Fine. All right. So if you're in that category, then you could probably just turn off the podcast right now.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I truly do believe that that these tests showed me what I was good at, what I needed work on, and the things that I fell short of. And that's the way it is every year. And they're different every year.
You're right.
They're not the same every year. Last year, there wasn't a whole lot of barbell, and so I wasn't looking at my barbell strengths last year. This year, I am. Mm-hmm. So it's a changing sort of kaleidoscope of the different skill sets you need in CrossFit. But that's exactly what CrossFit is about. It's about being not bad at anything, not necessarily good at everything.
Right. Yeah, I mean, so what are some of the goals that people can shoot after? I mean, it's common now. It's like quarterfinals. For some people, it's very realistic. Some people, they're like, I don't want to put the work in to get there. Like, what are some other goals that people can pursue through the open?
One of the things that I've seen a lot of people do is they hit their head against lift numbers or some sort of gymnastics movement. Like, my question to you would be, what if there's someone who's like, you know what, I don't think I'll ever be able to do a 95-pound snatch.
Right.
I just can't.
Right.
Like, I just won't have it in me. Or I don't know if I'll ever be able to get a ring muscle up. I don't think I'll ever have it in me. What I was going to ask you, after you sort of hit those walls in the open, like, what do you do, or what do you tell an athlete, something like that?
Yeah, I mean, if it's a confidence thing where, hey, I'm never going to get a muscle up, or I'm never going to be able to snatch a certain weight. I mean, that's where you have to have like a real conversation. Like I love having these conversations with people after the open. Like I'm having a couple this week, recalibrate, and you have to kind of dig down to why do they feel that way. It's not really a coach's job for them to say, hey, yeah, you're probably never going to get a ring muscle up. It's to quote Henshaw, I will help you get there for as long as you want to try and get there. You know, I'm not going to guarantee you're going to get there. And so I don't have like a money back guarantee on the CrossFit Bison membership or your next level membership. But I'll help you get there. And I think there needs to be some honest conversations with the athlete and the coach. Like, let's use someone that doesn't have a ring muscle up that's been trying for 3 years. It's like, hey, Dave, what we've been doing, it's not working. You know, like, can we both kind of just like take a step back and kind of break down, is there something else we can try and pursue? I can go more macro level than that and say that someone that has that kind of weightlifting shortcoming, but also a high level gymnastics shortcoming is, hey, what's the answer? What can I do? I'm almost always going to point you towards more strength work. I do think that in CrossFit, even though most of the movements that we do are not with a barbell, not with a dumbbell or kettlebell, you're moving your body. And that's the way with the open too. Most of the movements that show up in the open, you're not moving an exterior load. But that doesn't mean you don't need to lift. And I think strength work is going to be the answer, especially as we get older, for almost everyone, right? If I continue to, and that does not come at the expense of technique work, especially with the snatch, but I do think that's an answer for everyone, no matter what kind of goal you are. And I think the health benefits beyond it too are enormous. So again, I think that our gym has an addiction to like those high volume, like the week we just had. The amount of people that said, I love this week, but like they're all sore as anything.
So beat up.
But the amount of times that like I've heard in that the workouts this week were hard. They were high volumes, just one after the other. And people love that. But they almost, if we came in this week, Monday through Friday, and just did 5x5s every single day, just lifted, people would not be happy. And I'm not telling you that you need to, right? I mean, there's a lot more that goes into fitness and working out than just what your performance is, what you're doing at the gym. But I do think there are a lot of benefits that people would get from just simply trying to get stronger. And whether it's the snatch, whether it's trying to RX the workouts next year, it's usually going to be strength. Now, just lost my spot. Hold on. Now, before we get into this 3 things that I want people to focus on mindset-wise, should everyone view the open as a test? You know, again, on the open announcement, I said it's a test and it's a celebration. I mean that fully. I thought a lot about that, and that's really kind of where my mind goes to. But do you think people should view this as a test, or do you think it should be more a celebration, if you had to pick one?
I think everyone should view it as a test.
Okay.
I really do. Yeah. And even regardless of where you are in your fitness journey, I just talked to an athlete today in open gym, and he said, this is my first open. I'm 15 pounds overweight. I know, like, this was so hard. And I said, yes. So this is a good sort of baseline test for you to evaluate yourself.
Huge,
and let's see where you are next year. Also, a high-level athlete who just had a kid, and this was her first open coming back, and she hated her performance because it wasn't near where she was. She was a quarterfinalist the year before, and so she's like, but I'm going to use this as sort of a baseline as well to see where I am.
I love that.
Yeah, my daughter Sasha, she scaled everything, but she did much better this year than she did last year overall. Yeah. I mean, you know, the teen division, like, listen, it's insane. Like, Mal O'Brien and those kids are in there. So it's not like she's killing it from a, like, absolute standpoint.
Right.
But from her own fitness standpoint, she really surprised herself and and did really well on the shuttle run.
And she's a busy girl. She can't CrossFit all year long.
No,
like, she can't train for the open all year long.
Right.
Just the fact that she did improve at all is pretty impressive.
She's really happy with it. And she's using that as a gauge for that, the fact, you know, to help her self-confidence, to know that she's getting better as she's getting older in CrossFit. So Absolutely. The key is not to make it only like if you do poorly on it to be negative about it.
Right.
Like use it as a test, but use it as an objective measure and say, okay, wherever I am, where can I go next year with it?
Yeah. And I mean, every success story out there includes failure at some point. So even if you are unhappy with how you did in the Open, or you just feel like you left something in the tank, or you just weren't ready to train this year, that's part of your success story right there. And it's probably the more important part of your success story than the actual success, right? Process over results. And part of the process is kind of coping with the peaks and valleys. Not just the peaks, the valleys as well, right? I mean, that's one of our most listened to episodes ever was the dopamine episode.
Right, yep.
And just you have those ups and downs, they're inevitable. But the better you are at maintaining that even ground throughout your year is going to help you out a lot. So let's go into number one of my mindset focused, which this can also be pretty tangible with how you physically do things at the gym. It's standards. I'm going to get the eye roll comment out of the way immediately. And this is not, hey, squat below parallel, lock your elbows out. That's not what I'm going to go into.
Yeah, but you should still do that.
Yes, that's yes, absolutely. And you should brush your teeth before you go to bed. I mean, come on, let's go. We know that by now. Standards. You need to practice and knowing them. I'm going to say this again. You need to practice and know the standards. All right. Every year, things get tweaked here and there with the wall walk, the handstand push-ups. I mean, I even find myself being like, wait, did they change the wall walk? Like Adam Ramsden picked me up this week. I got the scaled wall walk wrong when I was explaining it, and then he fixed me. Like, do your best to kind of know the standards. But from your perspective, the athlete that's trying to get better at CrossFit, okay, a lot of us want to practice muscle-ups, practice toes to bar, practice handstand walks, practice barbell snatch. How often do you ever come in and be like, I'm going to work on standing my barbell all the way up on hang cleans? How often do you see someone come like, I'm going to try to get that wall ball above that target every single time? How often do you see, someone, not jumping off 1 foot for a burpee box jump over? Like you don't ever see things like that. But then when the Open comes around and all of a sudden you have a judge and you have some of us coaches are a little bit stricter than others when we're trying to keep you guys accountable to this stuff, you now start to get no reps, or all of a sudden you have to do a standard that you haven't done all year, and now it's making the movement tougher. So you really haven't been training the movement all year, but now for the first time you're doing it by the book, and it's slowing you down, it's taxing you more. That is a huge deal, and I saw it a lot in the Open this year. I'm going to give a few examples without giving people examples. I'm going to give movement examples. What is your initial, beyond the eye roll, of comment of standards being something that someone needs to mentally focus on the year for the sake of their performance?
Absolutely. And I mean, I categorize movement standards into two things. One is safety. Like if there's something that's not helpful for an athlete, like from a health perspective, like when you do box jumps and you're crouching over and not standing up, that there's a standard there, but there's also that's bad for your back every time you're like crouching over.
Absolutely.
And so there's one that I'm sort of more after as a coach, but then the other one is like more arbitrary standards, like the wall walk, for example, changed to 60 inches or 55 inches. Mm-hmm. And that was really hard for me as an athlete.
That
like
sucked, yeah.
I used to be able to go 4 down, 3 back, and now I had to go 5 down, 4 back. Mm-hmm. And the temptation is to go back. So we just did a wall walk workout right this past week.
Yeah.
And I could see where the tape line was.
I'm thinking about keeping it there all year. Yeah.
And I was like, I know where I should be with my wall walk, but do I want to do that?
Yeah.
And so 1 or 2 I did, and I was like, oh, this is so much easier. And I was like, oh, man,
Yep.
But if I do this, I'm going to get burnt by this again later. Mm-hmm. So I started doing the normal, like the new wall walk standard. And it's really up to you. Like I coached that class too, and I watch people, and some people are keeping to the new standard, some people aren't. It's the little things in the future that you're going to see pay off.
Yeah. And that wall walk I have a few movements written down right now. I'm going to tell you guys that if you practice these standards, you are going to be a better athlete in next year's Open. The wall walks and the handstand push-ups are the first two. The wall walk, we do wall walks, let's say, probably 30 times a year. All right. Definitely not every week, but I would say rarely do we go 3 weeks without doing one in a workout. And when we do them, almost, I would say if I had to put a number on it, 80% of the people actually go all the way back with their hands. And then the other 20%, they kind of just almost get there and then they come back. And then those are the same people that really struggle with the wall walk. Why? Because when you're doing the open, you have to get to that line or you will get no rep. And you have to ask yourself, are you able to remove yourself from the emotion of the moment and actually do the movement to the standard every single time? And maybe we might keep that tape line on the floor all year so that people always know where they need to get to. The strict handstand push-ups, right? In the past, we've always said as long as you use those, 26 by 30, 36 by 24 mats, if your hands are in there, you're good to go. They now said your hand needs to be 10 inches away from the wall. Something needs to be touching a line that's 10 inches from the wall. And I noticed it on my strict hands. I felt close. And I'm going to get into how I think you guys can get better at these movements. And you're not going to like the answer because you don't get to wad or go hard. More mobility work, more stretching. And those two movements, the wall walk and handstand push-ups, if you have tight shoulders, if your thoracic is tight and you just don't like stretching because it's not fulfilling, those are going to bite you in the ass every single time. You have to work harder than every other person in the gym if you're tight and you're going upside down.
Not also to mention, you're going to have an increased risk of injury.
Yeah.
Like, I cannot emphasize to people, why do you feel like you're always getting nicked and dinged up? It's because I watch you move. Your mobility is not good. I know that because my mobility is not good.
Right.
And it limits you. It limits you on so many levels. But from a health perspective, there are some people who seem to be very resilient, and then some people who always get dinged up. And I can tell you right now, the ones who really either are naturally very mobile or work on their mobility, and you see them all the time working on it, there's a difference.
It pays off. And here's a question for you, rhetorical, right? If you were to work all year on your mobility, thoracic, hips, wrist, knowing that you would only gain 2 inches of mobility, 2 inches of range of motion, would you do it? Would you work all year for that? And keep in mind, 2 inches spread out over the course of 11 months. You're looking at a third of an inch every month. Would you work all year? Would you come to the stretch at the gym every day or every other day for the whole year to get that? And if the answer is no, dude, I want to WOD, or no, I want to be on Instagram instead, or I want to talk with my friends. More power to you. You're going to go through the same exact thing next year when this stuff comes up. And let's get away from just wall walks and handstands. I think a front rack, your front rack mobility, if that sucks and you've been doing CrossFit for a long time, that is what you want to fix, not how much you can thruster, right? Because I'll tell you this right now, no offense, unless you take a PED, if you've been doing CrossFit 5, 6, 7 years and all of a sudden you're going to try to get your 1 rep max thruster up a lot, it's not going up much in the next year. I'm sorry, unless you're really young. Like if you're Alex L, I don't even know how much stronger that kid could get. But, if you're on the older side, master's athlete, let's say, and you've been doing CrossFit for a long time, you're not getting much stronger. And you could hate me for saying it. It's the truth. You will not get much stronger than you are right now.
I hate you.
But
I'm just kidding.
Your mobility can improve.
Yep.
1,000%. And if your mobility improves in your front rack, you will thruster more weight next year.
It's a health issue too. So if you've ever watched people do an overhead squat and they lack mobility, thoracic, hip, ankle, knee, what are they doing? They're cranking those shoulders so far back. And that's the extreme example of what a lack of mobility is going to do. Think about every other movement. We always have problems as CrossFitters in terms of shoulder mobility.
Yeah.
I mean, shoulder injuries.
Yeah.
But it's not our shoulders oftentimes that are the issue. We're asking too much of our shoulders because we are lacking mobility everywhere else.
Yep.
So it's not just would you work all year to gain 2 inches of range of motion, is would you work all year so you don't torque your shoulder and jack it up and be out for 6 weeks because you tried to overextend because you lacked mobility on something else.
Part of my knee issue has come from a lack of mobility in my quad and my hip. And I've always pigeon pose is great. I have great backside flexibility. But now that I go PT, you find out I've neglected a lot with my quad over the years, and it caused any injury.
So how do people go, okay, so someone's listening to the podcast and they're like, yeah, all right, I want to work on my mobility. What am I going to do?
My best one is the GoWOD app. It's the best app. It's not expensive. It's comes up with a tailored program for you. They are not a sponsor, by the way.
I was about to ask.
But hey, well, listen, if you guys want to reach out to us, the They basically give you a mobility test through the app, and you put your scores, and it's a pretty easy. I've done it. It's very easy. It's not overwhelming. It doesn't take a long time, but it gives you a mobility score on all parts of your body, and then the algorithm inside of the app will basically give you your own stretching program that you could do every day. It's pre-workout, post-workout, or just a stretch. And it could be 8 minutes, 15 minutes, 22 minutes. Like, it really can be tailored to what you want to do.
I'm going to try it.
And I think that I would love a few people to get on this. And I don't know a single high-level athlete, and I'm like these guys, high-level athlete that does not spend a lot of time on their mobility. You don't need to emulate them. You're not going to, you don't need to be a games athlete to work on it. But if you are trying to maximize and you're sick of just trying harder or starting a new program or paying another, $200 a month for someone to program something for you, that might be solution number one. All right. My number 2 concept, this is when I say outside the box, this is one of them, but I'm going to roll with it. It's loyalty. And loyalty to me, it's funny. I've had 2 things that stand out in my mind. One of them is recent. One of them is from over 10 years ago about what truly is loyalty. And from the book Liar's Poker by Michael Lewis.
Oh, yeah.
In the book, I remember reading it and just being like, wow, that makes so much sense to me. And it says, those that are short-term greedy are never loyal. And if you think about really what happens when someone is not loyal to another, it's usually they're trying to satisfy the moment, right? This can be a relationship. This can be a gossip thing. This could be a social media thing. They're just so infatuated with, I want to make myself happy right now, so I'm going to screw everything else, screw everyone else, and I just want to make myself happy, and then I'll just live to fight another day. I'll just do again the same thing tomorrow. I want to build this into your training for yourself. Loyalty to yourself is big to me, right? Loyalty to your coaches, your owners, your friends, your family. Let's not go there yet. Loyalty to yourself. If you truly want to get better in the next 11 months so that next year when the Open comes up, you are ready to rock, you have to stop trying to satisfy the moment. And I understand how much going to a CrossFit gym helps your mental state. How many times do we hear that? Right? Like, if I didn't have this place, I'd go nuts. Or I got blocked out of class because I got waitlisted. I had a bad day. I feel that way. When I don't work out for a few days in a row, I get grumpy. You could ask Ash. I do. But I think we need to try as hard as we can, if you're chasing performance, to stop trying to satisfy the moment. You might need to go backwards 3 steps for you to go and try to get that muscle up next year. You might need to, stop working on your butterfly for the next, 2-3 months and get back to strict pull-up work. And even though your scores are better when you butterfly, you feel better about yourself when you have good scores and fast times, and everyone's like, oh, wow, look at you. You're so awesome, right? If you are just going to kind of run in this hamster wheel of just try hard, and hope, try hard and hope, try hard and hope, I don't think it's going to work out for you. Opening thoughts on this, Sam?
That's hard. It's really hard to do. And sometimes you actually need a system or a way of keeping yourself accountable for this, because it is so easy to chase that short term. Mm-hmm. And in some ways, when I was listening to you just talk about that, I said, there are so many situations in which I don't want to do that.
Right.
So how do I try to keep to my long-term goals? Mm-hmm. You force yourself to in a situation where you don't have a choice. So sometimes that means getting other people to make you accountable. So if you're like, you know what? And you see this in the morning, actually, like some of the 5 a.m.ers, like they'll come in and do their whatever strict pull-ups or their GHDs. Yep. And they're doing it, I think if they had to do it by themselves, they wouldn't do it. But they're doing it because they know other people are doing it. Mm-hmm. When I got better this year because I was always skipping the Wednesday WODs. Mm-hmm. And I was forced to do them on Sundays because I was coaching. Yeah. And I really didn't want to do it. Yeah. But I put myself into a situation where I sort of had to do it. And so if you feel like you're not, you know what you have to do from a long-term perspective, right, and avoid the short-term, take that decision out of your hands and try to put it in a way where you don't have a choice to but but to do it.
Right.
And that way that want to is now like a have to.
Right.
And
it becomes more natural in time.
Right. And it could be as simple as partnering up with someone on a Sunday to do these things. Or that's why you always say make things public, because it sort of almost makes you feel like you have to do these things.
Right.
So whatever situation it is where you're taking that choice out of your hand and putting into something where you're sort of forced to do it, I think overall is going to make it better.
And you could think deeper and beyond your training. I mean, let's think about lifestyle, right? What separates a lot of people from hitting their performance goals? It's the outside the gym stuff. It could be your nutrition. It could be your water intake, your sleep, stress management. It could be alcohol, right? I'll use myself as an example because alcohol is very touchy for some people. But there are times where I'm stressed, right? And I don't want to drink my stress away, but I just want a drink at night. And it's like harmless. It's a drink. No one's going to criticize for me. Ash is never going to say a word. If anything, she thinks I should have more, right?
I've seen you post the beer while you're
cleaning the floor. Yep.
Yeah.
But there are times if I'm really in a full-blown training mindset, I know that if I keep doing this or if my nutrition's not on point, even though that meal tastes so good in that moment, that's a short-term greed to me in this respect, all right? I know we all need balance. We all need our times. But if I'm just randomly having a 2-3 beer, one turns into 2, turns into 3 beers on a Tuesday night, and I'm training hard the next morning, and our sleep's already garbage with a 2-year-old, I'm making things worse for me. Maybe not for tomorrow's workout, although it could be. It could be where I want to be 2 months from now. And it become a habit, right? I remember during the pandemic, I was drinking 4 or 5 nights a week. I think we were just bored as hell. But like it turned into Tuesday, that's fine. All right, Tuesday, Thursday is fine. Okay, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. Oh, Yellowstone's on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and like it spirals. And I think if I had more awareness back then, or even recently, right, as I try to get back into my training lifestyle, which is coming up. Those are the things that, yes, as much as I'm craving that meal or craving that snack, craving that beer, craving that tequila, whatever your crave is, that's a clear sign that right now you're being short-term greedy because I know deep down it's not good for my long-term, but I'm doing it because it's going to make me feel better in the moment. And how we balance those decisions day to day without expecting perfection, right, I think will say a lot about us a year from now. Strong? Too strong?
No, okay. I really agree with that.
Okay, good. So, and this, again, the one more thing I want to say on this too was the training partners, because our last part is going to be about competing and who you're training with, all this stuff. The training partners is something I want to touch on too. There's certain people I love to work out with, certain people I don't like to work out with. I try to get around both. There's certain classes I don't like to work out late at night, early in the morning. I can, pick apart everything. I want to make sure.
Who don't you like to work out with?
You.
I knew.
Your burpees are too fast. Anyone that's stronger than me, I'm like, I had to do Fridays while with DiCarlo behind me, and I'm like, he's probably bouncing the barbell and cheating because he squats fast. But I think that thinking about your long term and just the concept of loyalty to yourself. If you're, we say this all the time in this podcast. If you are chasing after comfort and what just makes you feel better in the moment with who you're training with, who you're training next to, I think long-term it's going to kind of take a bite out of your apple a little bit. Last part here is competing, all right? Now, let's be real about this. If you have a performance goal, if you have a competitive goal in the open, but you try to say that you're not competitive, you're contradicting yourself. The numbers that dictate whether or not you hit your goal, if it's a ranking-based, quarterfinal-based, or gym-based, you are essentially losing or winning to other people. And I think many people get overwhelmed in the open because that's the first time they've put themselves into an environment like that. And our gym is competitive by nature. I'm not saying you need to make every day a competition. I don't think you should. And if you do, keep your mouth shut about it. Just keep it internal, right? I try to beat people in the gym all the time, and I don't need to tell anyone about it. It helps fuel my fire. But I think there's a mental characteristic that comes from being like that helps people out in the open. I think there's a lot of athletes that leave reps and weights on the board because they've never put themselves in this environment before. This intense, oh my gosh, I'm nervous. Why am I nervous? Why do I feel nauseous? Why do I have to pee every 5 minutes, right? Because they just kind of were blah all year with like that go-getter mentality. What do you think about trying to put yourself in more competitive environments throughout the year to help you out in next year's Open?
Mixed. So I think you definitely have to be able to put yourself in that environment. And the only reason, and I was thinking about this year's Open, and it could have broke for me either way. Like there were a couple,
right.
Like I had to perform at a certain time or really do something in a very time pressure environment, and I was able to execute only because this was probably my ninth Open. Mm-hmm. And so I've been in that situation before where you don't think, you're just executing. And I know 5 years ago, it probably wouldn't have broke for me that way because I hadn't had enough experience in that. That being said, if you put yourself in that all the time, it's really difficult.
It can burn you out too.
Oh yeah, and just too much stress. And most days when I'm wadding, I'm focusing on my own points of performance, execution. Sometimes, and I do this, and we talked about this. I'll take that last 2 minutes and really push, or see where I can go with it, depending on how I feel. Mm. Certain workouts I think are very important. Some of the Open prep workouts that we did, I definitely put myself in that mindset again where I'm scared, like how's this going to go? Like this is awful.
Yep. Where do you stack up? That kind of thing. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like can I push myself? So you have to pick and choose some of those, I think, and especially for me who, I'm not chasing it every day for sure. Mm-hmm. But yeah, if you are on the sport or the competitive side of things, and there's a skill to performing, and I've done local comps, mm-hmm. and that can be super helpful. I mean, there's nothing like being in a comp and having all of these people around you and performing, especially in a partner comp where you don't want to let your partner down.
Yeah.
Like all those situations, you can put yourself in a lot of different situations over the year that can really help you sort of get that competitive execution skill. Better.
Local comps have helped me out a ton in that. And there's a few options, guys, coming up. We had CrossFit Waldo has one coming up at the end of April. CrossFit 908 has their annual co-ed partner competition in the middle of May. There's going to be others that come up. If you ever see one and you kind of want to throw your hat in the ring, again, it doesn't even need to be to do well at that comp. I just think it can channel some things in you as an athlete, as a person, that can help you out with a long-term goal if you have an open-based goal. Again, think long-term. That like signing up, like I'll have some people that won't sign up for 908 because there's like a bar muscle up in the workout. I'm like, well, what about the other 9 movements of the day? What about the environment of going back and forth? What about really pushing through your threshold on an assault bike? There's benefits to every local comp that you ever sign up for. And I think if performance is really a big goal for you in the Open, I think you need to find a comp or two throughout the year. And it could even be the Bison Bowl at Bison in the summer if you don't want to spend too much money. That will help you achieve that goal. Other little things I think you can do. I have a few little things that you could do day to day, week to week at your gym that will help. Finding those around you that push you, maybe even to a point of discomfort. I love some of the classes that we have. I tell them all the time, you guys are so lucky. I don't think everyone even realizes how lucky we are to have the amount of athletes in this gym that can push you. And I would love to see some of that, there's a general understanding. Like Julia Kelly told me that her and she'll go after it with Karen sometimes, or some of the other 6 a.m. girls, like Kayla's there, and Karen, right? Special K's. That helps her, but I even kind of wanted to push her more towards like, how about you? They're also your friends, It's like I would love to see some like, I'm coming at 4:15 tonight or 5:15 because so and so is here, and not that we dislike each other, but it's going to help me try to put me in this edge of I'm trying to beat that person or trying to get the most out of myself, make myself uncomfortable, and I also think that brings up the timing component to it that. I think working out at different times based on when your open workouts are will help you, right? If you can. I'm not telling you to rearrange your life and kids' lives to train at a certain time, but let's say you are a morning athlete. This happens a lot, right? You work out at 5, 6 a.m. all year, 5, 6, 7. Open comes around, you want to work out at the open party because it's fun. It's like the sickest environment of the year. Like I do too. I wish I could do it. Maybe next year I will. You should try to find some nights to work out. It doesn't have to be every week. It doesn't even have to be every Friday night. It could just be like 15 times throughout the year. You're going to go to a random 5:15, 6:15. It'll stimulate you because there's new people, new surroundings, maybe a new coach too, which will always help to not always be coached by the same person. But it puts you in that schedule, right? How many people show up to the gym on a Friday night during the open workout at that time for the first time, and it's the first time they've ever worked out with 3 meals inside of them, right? They're used to waking up, no food, and going to work out. Like, that needs to be trained. That needs to be practiced. That needs to be thought about. And those are things I think that can really help you get into a competitor's mindset. Because I'll tell you what, guys like that, they practice that stuff all year. It's nutrient timing. What time, what will they eat if they're working out at night? What time, what will they eat if they're working out in the morning? Any thoughts on that? Because, Sam, you did the open on a Thursday night, and I don't like to get too controlling of you or any athlete in the gym unless they ask.
Thank
but
you.
I would have suggested more night workouts prior to that, especially considering you were kind of on the bubble this year.
Yeah, I know. I didn't have I didn't push the competitive aspect of it this year. I wanted to, if I fell there, if I fell on the good side of the quarterfinals, I was good.
Happy,
if I didn't, I was sort of saying to myself, I would be okay. Now I'm like, in retrospect, maybe I wouldn't have been okay. I would say that in years past, when we did the Thursday night lights, I had gone to evening classes more.
Okay.
It's been kind of busy lately for me at work, and so it was really
That's tough. Yeah,
it was hard for me. I did go once or twice. That whole context, like, it's basically prepping your mind for the context,
right?
So that your context feels comfortable when you need to compete at your highest level,
right?
And so all of these things are basically making sure that your mind is like, oh, I'm comfortable in this situation. I know that I have my confidence and I can compete. Mm-hmm. And certainly, if that was an issue this year, I would have done that. I don't know. I feel like it probably would have helped me more. There were, like, for example, the first workout, like, I got one ring muscle up.
Right.
I knew I had 2 or 3 in
for
me.
Sure.
And probably some of these little things would have gotten me there. Pisses me off. I left a little bit on the table, but whatever. It was like, to me, that wasn't my goal. I think if next year I might have to tune it up a little bit if I really want to make it. And now that I have a couple of years, that might be a good goal for me to sort of shoot for.
Right. Yeah. And it's something, again, like, I like the idea that you think about this now, and you're not putting pressure on yourself January 18th to do it 3 times in a row. Like, things come up. But if you have a random night throughout the year, I think it's just something to maybe plan ahead and play around with.
Yep.
Last part of this is from a competing mindset, and this did make a difference for a few people this year, is repeating a workout. And you guys all know how I feel about this. It's all about what you want to do, what you want to get out of the open. If you want to repeat a workout, go for it. But I'll tell you what, if you're on the bubble or you think you might be on the bubble next year, you getting a few more reps in every workout might be the difference. So that's something I talked about this 2 years ago more than I talked about this year. That's something that can be practiced. I want some of my athletes to do the Friday WOD at Bison, then come do it again on Sunday.
Ooh.
Now, you got to be careful with which movements are involved. Like, I wouldn't have done last Friday's workout, the one with the squat cleans, push press, toes to bar, double under, handstand push-up, especially with what we're doing the next day. Like, Monday, we're back almost doing the same movements. So you have to be careful. Don't do this every week. I'll definitely help out anyone that wants to do this. But if you are trying to chase after every possible rep, there is so much untapped skill in people to get a score on a workout and then think about it for 24 to 36 hours, come up with a pacing plan, and then try to beat the score. I can't tell you how many times it's helped me in the past. I can't tell you how many times it's helped other people to repeat a workout. And again, I say this with caution. You should not be doing every workout. There are certain movements that you should just not be doing twice in 36 hours. But that's a huge deal. There are a couple people that missed the quarterfinals this year that if they got 4 more reps per workout, they would have been in.
Yeah, I could think of at least 3 or 4 people that were like, I was short by 10 places.
Yep, and there was a few that just barely made it too.
Yes.
That repeated a workout.
Yep.
It can mean something if you have a competitive goal. And there's nothing wrong with repeating. I'll say that until I'm no longer involved in this. I feel strongly about it. It's got to be a personal decision. You just got to make sure your head's in the right place. And that's my closing thought on that part of this. episode. Do you have any closing thoughts?
I was just thinking, not to sort of put the quarterfinalists up so much, but I was just thinking what they might have in common. And honestly, I was thinking about all 20 and I mean, except for me, honestly, because I'm the oldest one out of the group, except for I think Tracy and Kathleen, but they're women and they move really well. The women everyone moves really well, basically.
They both crush you in the open too.
They are. Yeah. Every one of those 20 moves really well. Like if you look at their technique,
it's true.
Like no one is sloppy. No one has like crappy toes to bar or like, their form is excellent. And I think one of the things that I would say if I had aspirations is I would want to make sure that all of my movements got better and better. Like
quality of movement.
And actually, that was one of the things I took away from the Open this year is, I don't think my quality of movement was what it could be for certain movements. And I started really saying, I got to think about how is it that I'm moving for everything. So for the whole year now, I'm going to really think about, like, how am I really doing toes to bar the right way?
Right.
Maybe I could do some more if I sort of kind of
feet together on the way up.
Right.
I think that's one of your biggest issues with toes to bar, like your feet separate a little bit.
Yes, and I've been working on. I just worked on that today.
Right.
Going overhead with certain things, like really making sure
head through,
like all of the things that I feel like can make me look like a better athlete is going to actually make me a better athlete.
And you can follow the old school methodology of CrossFit is mechanics, then consistency, then intensity. And this would be the time of year to screw your scores for a little bit. Think, be loyal to yourself. Think long-term, not short-term. And fix some of your movements, even if it makes your workout slower. This is the time of year to do it.
Right now.
Not in January next year.
Yep.
Like, it's too late if you want to turn the switch at that point. So those that try to blend this desire to work hard, get after it, go hard, try to mesh that with, or even put it behind the mechanics and consistency of those mechanics. This is the time of year to do it. And if you do that, like Sam said, you will be better next year. I can almost guarantee it. Not a money back guarantee, though. All right. Thank you, guys. Great job in the Open. And we can't wait to just kind of help you out, get to whatever your goal is next year, no matter what it is. Reach out to us. Let us know. And we have the next Herd Fit Q&A session coming up in our next episode. Can't wait.
Thank you, everybody, for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Herd Fit podcast. Be on the lookout for next week's episode.